Good morning and welcome to Vantage Point. I'm Marcia Boyles, and I'd like, as usual, to begin by introducing my co-host and co-producer, Kathleen Taylor. Good morning, Kathleen.
Good morning.
And I'll say your title, which is difficult sometimes to say in all one breath.
Mouthful.
Which is the clinical social worker at our medical center.
Right.
Kathleen, we have, I think, an interesting program today. We have, we're calling it Supporting Our LGBT Family Members. And our two guests, let me begin by introducing them. To my right is Marie Warnock, who is a fellow Canterbury Square resident for
Yes.
13 years, you said, Marie. And Lisa Borum, who is a staff member in our fitness center, and your title is fitness specialist. Is that correct?
Yes.
Good. Lisa and Marie, we're delighted to have you today. We're just excited about this program. Kathleen, do you want to begin by telling us how we're going to address this issue?
Yeah. I think I just want to preface the conversations that we're going to have with some of my thoughts. We know the world is changing so much, and it's changing quickly and dramatically, and it's affecting the way that we see each other and the way that we see our relationships with other people. So what I want to think about, have people think about a little bit in terms of our show today is, this idea of gender diversity. This is kind of what we're touching on when we talk about different roles and different gender identities that people are now taking that they might not have felt comfortable pursuing previously. I'm doing a little research. I went online, and Facebook now has apparently 50 identifiers for gender identity. Can you imagine?
50.
50. So we have come a long way from our binary male or female to more than 50 ways that people can identify themselves from.
We've even come a long way from LGBT, haven't
That's
we?
true. I think they might start to rethink how many letters they're going to.
Exactly. I know there are at least 3 now behind the LGBT.
Yeah, absolutely.
50.
And another thing that came up was the idea of that whole binary male or female was a study that they did in 2015 with millennials, which were the 18 to 34-year-old group, very much seeing gender identity as a spectrum versus just the two choices. And I think that the article said that younger people, younger than 18, are tending to see that even more so. So again, we are really, really seeing the world change, and it's affecting how people are feeling about themselves, and again, how they're relating to one another. And because we want to always put a personal face on this, we're happy that Marie and Lisa are here to be able to tell a little bit about your stories. And maybe can we start with Lisa?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I have 3 children. I have 2 girls and my son Noah. And about 6.5 years ago, Noah came to me and my husband. It was 2 days after Christmas, and there was something on his mind, and then he just kind of blurted out that he was gay. And
he was how old then?
He was 15 years old. He was 15. He was a freshman in high school, so pretty young, according to other people, to come out. We were totally shocked. I know some parents that I've talked to had ideas that their children were gay, but my husband and I had no idea that Noah was gay. The minute he told us, he was so relieved. He said he had started suspecting when he was in elementary school, and it pretty much confirmed when he was in middle school. And he just felt that burden of keeping it from me and my husband. So he came out, and we cried. There was a weight on him because he is the last of our last name. So all through the years we'd say, oh, you got to carry on the Borum name. So there was a weight on him for that. And we said, please don't worry about that. That's kind of an old-fashioned, everybody's got to have somebody to carry on the name. But he just felt so relieved. Well, me and my husband, it was just the start of the journey for us. So I, of course, was fearful for his well-being. I worried that people in school would pick on him or abuse him or be mean to him. He told me he had some big football friends that would definitely defend him if anybody started picking on him. So, but I mean, it's still a concern of mine. Also worried about if he had any thoughts of suicide, because I know when people are LGBT, sometimes the weight of that just gets to them. He assured me that he loved himself very much, and that he liked who he is, and there was no threat of the suicide. So that was good, but I still had concerns about his psychological well-being. On my part, my husband's part, we suffered kind of a loss of the dream that we had for Noah.
Mm-hmm.
We thought he would go to college, get married to a woman, and have children. Not that that dream can't happen, it's just going to hopefully happen in a different way.
Look a little different.
Yes,
yeah.
He just wants to have a marriage, but that won't be obviously to a woman, and who knows if children are in the picture. But at that point, I suffered that. And then I just knew I needed to get information, so I went on the internet and found out about PFLAG, and I live in Woodbridge, Virginia. The closest PFLAG was in Vienna, Virginia, far away, but I drove up there. I got so much support from PFLAG, the other moms. It was wonderful.
We should probably stop and define PFLAG.
A PFLAG is parents, friends, and families of lesbian and gay people. So it's filled with LGBT people and their family members, so it was just a support group that I really needed.
And we have a PFLAG group here at Greenspring that you were also active in.
Yes, I attended the PFLAG here. I ended up starting a PFLAG in Prince William County because there was not one close to us, and that's still going strong too. So it was a wonderful resource, lots of support, lots of information, and things are always changing. As Kathleen says, there's so much to keep on learning. So that was definitely a positive thing. I was very active in a church, and I did go to my pastor about this because I was concerned about my son. And unfortunately, he was a very conservative pastor, and he pretty much said that love the sinner, hate the sin. So pretty much said, keep loving Noah, but being gay is a sin. And I knew it wasn't at that point, and I knew Noah would not choose to be gay. I knew he, so I just ended up leaving that church and ended up finding another gay-friendly church. So, because my faith is very important to me, and I knew that what he was saying was incorrect, so I kind of left that behind. Right now, after he came out, I wanted to support him. I contacted his high school because I knew there were some gay teachers, because I know he needed gay role models, male gay role models. So I met with 2 of the teachers there, and they assured me that the high school was safe, it was gay friendly, even though I still worried about people possibly picking on them, which as far as I know didn't happen.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Lisa.
So but they were glad that I informed them about that. And then a few months later, we went to the Gay Pride Parade in DC, and Noah loved it. We came out of the subway and we're sitting at a cafe, and he saw men holding hands out in public, and it just made him feel wonderful to see, the people out in public too. So he had some boyfriends in high school that were very nice, and right now he's in his 4th year at IIT in Illinois going for architecture, and he has a boyfriend, and he's very successful, he's very confident. Right now he's studying abroad in Japan, so his college career is taking off, so it's a very wonderful story that he came out at 15 and now he's over 21 and he's doing great. So that's my story.
Good story.
It's an excellent story, and the fact that you educated yourself, the fact that you contacted all the people that could support him and you, I think is a terrific story.
Support is just number one. I mean, so many gay people I've talked to, when I tell them the story, they said they wish their parents or their friends or somebody was supportive, because they came out and felt very alone. So support is just so important to the people.
Do you have a sense, that was about 6-7 years ago? Do you have a sense of whether it would be or whether it's easier now?
It's definitely easier now, because I'm hearing that children in elementary school are identifying as gay or transgender. So, and the young people, in Noah's age group, they don't care. I mean, Noah wanted us to tell the family, all of his cousins could care less
That's right.
that he was
Yeah.
gay, you know, and it's
Right.
the older generation has more opinions on it, but
Right,
the younger
right.
generations, they don't care. He went to homecoming in high school with his boyfriend, and people loved it. They were taking pictures of him. They said how cute they were. So the younger generation they just are more accepting of LGBT people. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. And that's the age group that the study was on, which said, you know, that they really don't identify just two ways of being, that there's a whole spectrum. So
Yes.
yeah, so that's always good to know that change can have a positive effect on us and our society for sure.
Marie,
My turn.
your turn. Mhm.
Well, I wish I had the detail that Lisa has, but as a grandparent of a transgender male, I have just bits and pieces from the family. And even though I been in touch with Kyle, which is his transgender name, I really don't see him that often, and they live in a Midwestern town, so conversations with him are you don't have intimate conversations with people on the telephone like that. You have to have there has to be more personal contact, but he began to question his sexual identity when he was about 14. And to my son's credit, he's told him, he said, don't be in a hurry to make a big change. You're an adolescent. Change is going through right now in so many areas of your life. Don't be in a hurry to decide. Give yourself a little time, which he did. But eventually, because he was in a small Midwestern town, he decided that was too onerous for him, and he decided to, with the help of my son and his wife, contact my daughter who lives in Maine. And Rosemary said, sure, come on. And even though Maine that was a small town too, it was different from where he started. So he moved up to Maine, lived with my Rosemary for probably 2 or 3 years, finished high school, did very well. He's a good student, and fit in nicely, had 2 part-time jobs, which helped my daughter support him. And eventually, presently he's now a senior. I can't believe he's gotten a number of extra credits, and he's a senior in college. I don't know what his current specialization is, but 2 years ago he wanted to be a translator, a signer. And someone said to him, you can name your own price, you can buy your own ticket.
For the deaf.
Yeah. So whether he's going to continue to do that, I don't know. Anyway, he gets excellent grades. He socializes well, I'm told. And the last time I saw him was probably 2.5, 3 years ago when he graduated from high school, and he looked wonderful. He seemed happy. The family is very supportive. So, I mean, just like Lisa is saying, nobody really cares as far as I know, as far as I can see. But, you know, I think they protect the grandmother or the great-grandmother. They don't give a lot of detail, but I can read between the lines. It seems as though he's well received. The family seems they don't care as long as he's doing well. And why should they care if it's not impacting them in any way? They're not being negatively influenced by him. One
of the things, Marie, that we might talk just a little bit about is the fact that in our Greenspring PFLAG, we see not infrequently grandparents being hugely supportive of their LGBT grandchildren, and in some cases, it appears as though more supportive on the part of the grandparents than even of the immediate family, which is quite a good thing to see. I think. I mean, I think they've done the same thing that both of you have done, and that is educated themselves, and have provided tremendous support for their LGBT grandkids, which I think we all feel good about.
Why do you think that is?
I suspect in part at this age and stage we're not immediately involved. I mean, they aren't our kids directly. We're a little bit removed. I don't know, Kathleen, you're the social worker. How would you explain it?
Yeah, I don't know exactly either. I mean, I think that sometimes parents are a little bit more invested in what their expectations were, what their dreams were, like Lisa said, about how their
That's a good way
children
of
were
putting
gonna turn out. And so then you have to kind of rethink that. So that's a bit of a process. And maybe as you get older, you get a little bit more open to the fact that, you know, things are changing. You have that perspective that, you know, the world has been changing for your whole life and it's going to continue to change. So let's not get too wedded to one way of thinking.
Yes, I think that's I would hope that is the case, that as we grow older, maybe we're just
Get a little
we're
mellow.
a bit more a bit more tolerant and a bit less invested in stereotypes. I think is the way I would phrase it.
Yeah.
So, you know, interesting that Lisa's talking about, you know, carrying on the name or whatever that she felt or they felt or what they were imposed. Noah felt that it's a good thing to debunk those stereotypes.
It's just not important.
No, it really isn't. And this, my young grandson, is such a pleasant, decent, productive young man that, you know, why would you object to whatever he wants to do for himself, which is very basic, very fundamental, and it's not impacting us in any way. And that's one of the things I guess my interest maybe is why people, and in doing some reading, why people could be so angry about transgender people. How does it, I guess the question I have to ask is, how does it impact you? If it's impacting you in a negative way, tell me about that. What is going on with you that you feel you need to distance yourself from your child or your grandchild? Is that what it is, or is it something else? What's going on? And that was the question.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think we've touched on that, you know, in other areas, just with the idea of how difference makes people uncomfortable and not understanding any difference. You know, it's happened in the civil rights movement, in the women's movement, all of the movements that we've had is that initially there is that sense of, you know, this person, if they're different, that means that there's something sort of wrong, or it's us against them kind of thing. So it really is I mean, learning for sure, and trying to find out what the commonalities are, because there's all the human commonalities remain. This is like a very small part of who we are as people. So
certainly the whole issue of otherness and the way we deal with others and otherness is a huge cultural issue right now on so many levels. I mean, political as well as cultural. I mean, it just is sort of the the issue, I think, of this particular time in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, everything is getting really shaken up. I mean, I think we did the show a few months ago on sexual harassment, and that is, again, you know, male-female roles. You know, there were a lot of people were accepting different kinds of roles that we shouldn't have accepted, and then women sort of had to start questioning that. And now, you know, there's the Me Too movement and the Time's Up movement, and so I think, again, we're looking at, you know, what our expectations are about how we relate to one another and what our perceptions are of who we are as people. And that's a good thing. That can only lead to good things.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, and I think we still do see, of course, stereotypes and people fairly rigid But you know, when we opened the show, you were talking a bit about the fact that the world has changed and our perception of for example, gender diversity has certainly changed. But I was also remembering back to, I believe it was the Greeks who had all kinds of gender, I think, roles and accepted that in society. I also worked for a couple of years off and on with both the Hopi and the Navajo nations. And Native Americans have, I think virtually all Native Americans have always had the concept of 4 sexes, 4 genders. It's male, male, female, female, and then male, female, and female, male. And the in-betweens, the male, female, female males, had special roles in their society traditionally, and I think still do. More of the shamans. The women who were in that role were not the mothers, but they had the capacity, they had the rights to name children. And naming was a huge honor because it kind of foretold what the child would become. So they had very special roles that were different than the warriors and the traditional mothers.
That's
so
interesting.
Well, it was quite fascinating, and there was they were at least as honored as those who had traditional roles, and accepted.
And but I do think we're seeing that now too a lot, because there's not only the question of how people identify in terms of their gender, but how they express that.
Yes.
So people, the way that people are. I mean, it's something as simple as men never used to wear an earring. Now every man wears an earring. Women never used to get tattoos. Everybody's got tattoos now. So there's those smaller things, but definitely, it's just so much more. I mean, people are not in boxes anymore. The labels don't fit so well anymore. But it is interesting. There's also gender roles, and I think that's where society really starts to weigh in a little bit. I think society, as you were saying about the Indians, there were roles associated with those definitions. And so that's another thing that we have to fight too, is what roles are we taking? We take on a certain gender identity, we choose to express that in a certain way. That now we also have to deal with people trying to put us in those little boxes, those societal roles a little bit, And again, it's like
not a little bit.
Yeah, that takes a lot of resistance.
But I mean,
little
it's like
boxes.
we were
There you
talking
go.
about when women started to go to work. They broke sort of free of the idea that they had to stay home and raise the children. And now,
But society, when they went to work, really punished them by not paying them sufficiently. I mean, in all kinds of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, men are staying home. Men are able to choose now to stay home and be the caregiver or the home person. But I think that I'm not sure where people are at with that either. I think that had to go through some stages too, in terms of what's wrong with you. You're supposed to be out there, shooting the bears and bringing home the food, right? So, so I think we are just, things are just moving so fast. We don't know anymore.
Don't you think this started back in the 60s, really?
I think it started back in the 50s when everything was so
that's right.
So
I guess it did, because
we had to react. We had to react.
We had to react. Yeah, exactly. It did well, and probably well before.
But it took us a while, right?
It took us quite a long time, but I do think, I mean, remembering back in the 60s, that a lot of this kind of questioning really began. I mean, the whole hippie movement, after all, was a rejection of the stereotypic gender roles that we were brought up with. And goodness knows, we were brought up with them, all of us, of our generation.
Do you think those changes were precipitated by financial issues? Do you think that could be the basis of some of the reasons that women went to work? Of course, they needed the extra income, and they juggle their lives around their jobs and their children and their family.
Those gender roles were so limiting, both for men and women. I mean, our lives were so circumscribed if we adhered faithfully to those gender roles.
Right. True now too, right? I mean, you know.
Absolutely.
What I had read is that gender identity usually is pretty firm in the child's mind when they're about 4. So think of then, you know, how that evolves and how that child chooses to express their gender and what happens, how does society react to that. That's a whole progression that has got to be difficult at some level.
Yeah.
Your transgender grandchild realized this at 14 or something of that sort.
Around that, yes.
Yeah, because we also read about 2 and 3-year-olds.
That's
who
right.
Are declaring firmly that they are the other gender.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's you know, that's what I said, that at 4 kids usually know, but the whole idea of saying it out loud or telling somebody, you know, is a whole different story. You know, but
and nobody can force that on a 4-year-old. That has to be voluntary.
Absolutely.
They start realizing it young that something's different, and by the time they officially come out, it's a definite. So by the time somebody comes
No
out,
ambiguity about it.
they know by the time they come out, even though they might have been struggling with, you know, sexual orientation or gender identity. So
but as a social worker, I think about all of those years that, you know, that person can't say who they are, can't express who they are, and what that must feel like. So I am so happy to see parents being able to embrace the fact that their little girl, that I think is their little girl, you know, wants to dress like a boy and do boy things, and really support
And to
them
realize
through
that could be fluid too. That can be changed, and because while a child is working their way through their own identity and what they want to do, at 4 and 5 and 6 years old, that can switch back and forth. And
Yes, that's what I had read too.
Right. Since we have 50 choices, we really don't. Well, I'm sure we have more than 50 choices, but you know, at least, you know, who knows where things are going to end up, right?
50 choices.
Yeah. Crazy,
That seems like too many. But I have read the same thing, that it's quite fluid early on. The kids go back and forth. But that's kind of a normal progression. I remember wanting to be a cowboy at one point.
Sure.
Very dedicated to that
And I had
concept.
4 older brothers, and that was, when you talk about being thrust upon you, my father would toss me a bag of potatoes and say, carry that upstairs. And because he figured, well, if the boys could do it, I could do it. You know?
But that's good.
Sure was.
And that's like more like the gender role, right? You know, it's like just because you're a girl doesn't mean you have to sit back and let people carry the heavy load, right?
That's right. And my mother, on the other hand, would say things like, Marie, let the boys do that. And see, so my father would say, you know, she's strong, you know, she can carry 50 pounds. I couldn't carry 50-pound bag of potatoes up the stairs from the market, you know. But my mother would say, the boys, let the boys.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, I think many mothers encourage the rather rigid gender roles.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, we're getting the sign that it's time to wrap
I
up.
see that.
I think I give you all a chance to maybe leave us with any words that you would like to before we close.
I mean, as the mother of a gay son, I'm just very happy the way the world is evolving. They're embracing the different sexual orientations and gender identities, and I mean, I still worry about my son, you know, down the road, but we just need to accept everyone and respect what life choices they are making and how they feel about themselves. And we just need to respect and be considerate of each other, and I'm just glad the world is changing in the positive direction of that.
Yeah.
Marie?
There's some pieces of advice about the transgender piece, is that if you think that a person is transitioning, wait to, don't ask questions. Wait for that person to tell you what they want to tell you. Let them tell you about their decision. Be supportive. That's so key, and Lisa knows that from her gay son. And don't ask about medical procedures, and that's none of your business. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much we appreciate both of you coming on today. This has really been, I think, your stories are compelling and moving, and your support is great. And the whole issue of the changing world, I think, is one that we all embrace.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
thank you.
And I think I'd like to just add that, what my thinking is that though, there might be a lot of change happening in terms of how people express themselves and relate to one another, that I think that human needs don't really ever change. We all need to be loved and accepted and valued and feel like we have
Absolutely.
a place in the world. So I think that's happening, I'm happy to say, but it's slow, so.
Nicely said.
And then there's the political situation, which is another subject.
We won't even go
And to the announcements. Another time, Marie.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm going to do the announcements, the weekend highlights. History Forum is Charles Lindbergh at 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. and the Choristers Spring Sing at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. And then the Video Time Machine, I Can't Hear You, which was initially done on June 23rd, 2010, and that's going to be at 4 p.m., 7 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. And then the weekend concert is Dale Jarrett's May concert, which is at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. And then Monday on Village in Motion, dining and the Virginia primary election, and Spotlight on History with John Lee. So thanks
Good.
very much.
Thank you.
both
Good.
for
That's
coming.
very good.
This was an excellent conversation. One I think we'll probably continue at some point again.
Yeah.
This has been very helpful.
Thank you for having us.